It's time for cookies and crime. And because Valentine's Day is coming up, I thought I would do a love triangle gone wrong. This is the story of the chat room murderer. Thomas Montgomery was 46 and rather dumpy looking, a machinist and a Sunday school teacher living in upstate New York. He was married to a woman named Cindy and had 2 daughters. In 2005, Montgomery was online in the children's section of a gaming chat room. That's when he met someone with the username Tall Hot Blonde. Her profile picture matched her username. She was a pretty 18-year-old high school senior named Jessie, who played basketball, softball, and happened to be a virgin. Montgomery felt that it was inappropriate for him to engage in a conversation with a high schooler in a children's gaming chat room. So he created the username Marine Sniper, who was a buff and handsome 18-year-old Marine named Tommy. The profile picture he used was a Marine portrait of him from nearly 30 years before. Then, Jessie and Tommy soon struck up an intense online affair. Jessie sent somewhat suggestive photos of herself and even sent Tommy special packages full of love notes and pairs of her lace panties. And it wasn't just sexual. Over the months of their romance, the two talked of love and even of marriage. Montgomery was always away on his computer talking to Jessie, and his wife Cindy became suspicious. Cindy eventually found one of the packages that Jessie had sent him, so she decided to send her own package to Jessie. She included a photo of her family, which revealed the real Tommy, a middle-aged man with 2 daughters. When Jessie received the letter, she was of course upset. She sent a message to Montgomery breaking things off, and she even said he should be put in jail. Seeking revenge, Jessie reached out online to one of Montgomery's co-workers, a 22-year-old named Brian Barrett. The two began an online romance of their own. Jessie and Brian conversed in the same online chat rooms that Montgomery did. They made it clear to everyone, including him, that he was a liar and a pedophile. This enraged Montgomery, who once wrote to Jessie, "Brian will pay in blood." Montgomery went into a downward spiral. The final straw was when Montgomery overheard Barrett telling other coworkers that he was going to see Jessie to pop her cherry. So on September 15, 2006, he drove to their place of work to meet Brian as he got off his shift. Montgomery then shot him 3 times, killing him. Police quickly connected the crime scene to Montgomery, and concerned for Jessie's safety, they rushed to her home in West Virginia. Jessie's mother, Mary Schuyler, opened the door. When told about the situation, she broke down and cried. She admitted that she took her teenage daughter, Jessie's identity to catfish these men. And the underdressed photos that she sent to them were actually of her daughter Jessie that she took in secret. Schuyler's husband and Jessie quickly cut all ties with her, and Montgomery was sentenced to 20 years in prison. It's time for cookies and crime listener stories. This story was sent in by this person right here. I'm not going to say it because I'm not getting flagged. And this is about the last visit from Grandpa. So when I was around 7 or 8, I was having a really hard time falling asleep, like most kids my age. And around this time, my grandpa was diagnosed with cancer and had been removed from the hospital and taken home. He wasn't in the best shape, but we went to see him because my parents knew that it was the last time we were going to see him. When we got there, he was pale, and for some reason, I was kind of scared of him, which was very unusual for me. And I was barely around him the whole time we were there. When we left, he asked for a hug, and I started crying and sort of walked away without giving him a hug. That night was the worst night. It was like someone kept nudging me awake, and when I finally got up, I saw my grandpa sitting on the end of my bed. I burst into tears as I fled into his arms. Then he told me that he was going away and he wasn't coming back. "Well, we can come see you then," I said, confused. Then he let out a slight laugh and said, "Okay, you can come see me." Then he told me to go back to sleep, and I said goodnight to him. Then I fell asleep for about an hour until I was woken up by my dad with tears in his eyes to tell me that my grandpa had died in his sleep. And when I heard my dad say that, I didn't really know how to feel, so I started laughing, like it was some sort of joke. Then my dad asked if I was all right, and I responded with yes. When he left my room, I started sobbing. I kept seeing him for a few nights after that, but then he just disappeared. And I'm not sure when I fell asleep that night, but when I woke up, I didn't say anything to anyone about my grandpa or what happened. And this is the first time I am telling anyone about this. While I am flattered that this is the first time you're sharing this story, and I think it's a beautiful one because I 100% believe these stories. I believe that our loved ones want a proper goodbye sometimes when they didn't really get a chance to, and they will go out of their way to give you a proper goodbye. It's time for Cookies and Crime listener stories. This was sent in by Anonymous about a sleepover gone wrong. Anonymous says, one time when I was little, me and my friends had a sleepover. We were having fun until one of my friends, let's call her Amber, pulled out a Ouija board. She was usually known as a weird and creepy person at school, but I was very surprised. She asked if we wanted to play the game, and everyone said yes, but I was hesitant because of all those stories I have heard before. I didn't want to seem like a scaredy cat, so I said yes. We all put a finger on the little eye thing. I don't know what it's called. That's what Anonymous said. I think it's called a planchette. Anyway, we started the game by asking it a question. Are there any ghosts around? It said yes. Then someone asked, are you going to hurt us? It spelled out Maybe. We all got scared and took our finger off, except for Amber. We all decided to go to sleep after that because we were scared. We forgot to say goodbye, however. I have sleep paralysis and it started acting up. I always get scared and I want to move, but I can't. I don't remember what happened, but when I woke up, I felt a stinging feeling on my hip. I saw a scar bleeding and I screamed. The board was still on the ground from what I remember. Everyone woke up and Amber looked neutral, as if she meant it to happen. My friend, let's call her Jenny, had a med kit at her house and her parents helped out. They were able to patch up the scar, but it still hurt. Everyone left the room with me in there and I saw the Ouija board. I asked it one last question. Did you do this to me? It said, yes. I was so scared I started crying. I immediately said goodbye and I never touched anything like that again. I haven't contacted Amber after that incident and I hope she is doing better now. It's time for Cookies and Crime listener stories. This is the story of a Bob the Builder toy sent in by Kat. Kat says, I was about 7 when my great uncle had died. He had given my brother a Bob the Builder themed workbench toy that said a line like, you can do it, or sang the theme song. My family went to visit my great uncle, Warren, to say goodbye. He didn't even remember his own wife, but the moment we walked through the door, he started saying our names and hugging us. My aunt and the doctors were in shock. My brother, mom, aunt, and I went to grab some hot cocoa and coffee. My aunt was dumbfounded by the situation as he had Alzheimer's. On the drive home, my mom got a text saying he had passed away. We were devastated. We put the workbench in the garage and didn't think of it. Over the next few days, the workbench sang its songs. We removed the batteries, but it continued. After a week later, I couldn't sleep. Something in my gut told me to go to the garage, where I heard the workbench singing the song. Without any thought, I said, Uncle Warren? The singing immediately stopped. I turned my head to see a tall figure wearing a hospital gown. I looked harder to see my uncle, standing at the doorway. I blinked and he was gone. Now I'm 17 and the situation still creeps me out. It's time for Cookies and Crime listener stories. This story was sent in by Anonymous about their great-grandpa who has a gift. For a little context, these are stories my grandpa told me about his father, my great-grandpa Tom. This was a long time ago. I'm not sure quite how long ago. Tom woke my great-grandma Marie up at around 2 a.m. for what seemed like no reason. He said that he wanted to go downstairs and have a cup of coffee because they would be calling him at 2:30 a.m. to tell him his father had died. According to my grandpa, he had no reason to believe that his father would die, and when they would tell him, he just knew. Then at exactly 2:30, the phone rang and the person informed Tom that his father had dropped dead of a heart attack. This would later be the same thing that killed Tom. This story was one my grandpa experienced himself. He was going out to go sledding on a hill. He was about 14, 15, and Tom told him not to go. My grandpa didn't understand why. He had done all his chores, so he just left and Tom didn't try to stop him. Later, my grandpa fell and cut himself above his eye. He noticed it was bad and he didn't want Tom to see. He decided to sneak in through the bathroom window and he started trying to flush it with water. Then, Tom came up and knocked on the door and said, "Don't do anything. Just put pressure on it with a washcloth. We're going to the hospital." You need 5 stitches. This was all behind a door without even seeing my grandpa. They drove to the hospital, and when the doctors put in the stitches, it was exactly 5. My grandpa asked why Tom didn't stop him from going sledding. He said it didn't ever make a difference. My grandpa experiences things similar to this. His family had a history of it, but never as exact as Tom. No one ever really understood it. The gifts seemed to end with my dad. But recently, I've started having strange dreams that happen in real life days after. I know it sounds weird, and I agree. It's strange.